Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the talk this morning on overcoming the challenges of exporting overseas. My name is Jeremy Corner. I'm the owner of a company called Blue-Eyed Sun. We're a greeting card publisher that specializes in handmade greeting cards. My wife started the business in 2000. We've been going for 14 years. We first started selling cards overseas around 2003, so we've been kind of exporting for a long time, but not really properly until the last 2 or 3 years when we really sort of focused on export. I'll go into the detail of why that is in a bit, but we've really sort of focused on the UK market to start with and tried to get as good as we can over here and make our products as popular and commercial as possible. And that's taken us quite a period of time to really get the hang of things. With regards to this talk, if you want to tweet, I'm blue_eyed_sun, and all of these slides are on our blog. They go up live during the talk. And there's lots of other tips as well, besides export, on things like social media and what have you on my blog. So, yeah, like I said, since 2012, we've grown to about 12 or 15 countries. We've worked primarily doing this through distributors, although we have sold direct to retailers abroad. And we managed this without actually traveling to any of these countries. So, and the way we've done it is through shows like this and various other forms. So before I go into some of the detail about how we work and some of the things that have happened for us for export, I just want to talk about some of the sort of pros and cons and the risks involved. I think one of the first things you have to ask yourself before you start to export is, can I really handle the growth in my business that I'll get from this? When we first started looking at exporting, because we did mainly handmade cards, I was really conscious that we'd be doing sort of 2 or 3 times the amount of work for half the money, because you have to give such big margins over to distributors. So it was one of the things that made it slow for us to start, because it was my wife and I originally with the business. We were hiring staff, but we couldn't really keep up with the growth in the UK, never mind going abroad. So I would say, you know, if you are looking to expand overseas, you need to make sure you've got a good handle on things in the UK, you know, in terms of operationally, and also be able to handle things operationally with the extra volume that's coming in. So some of the things that'll happen is you'll obviously get more cards or more products ordered. That will mean you probably need more warehouse space than you need at the moment. So, you know, as a rough rule of thumb, you could sell 2 or 3 times the volume of what you're currently selling, you know, and you can imagine the impact that that'll have in your physical space for storing everything. It'll also mean things like supply chains lengthen, and what I mean by that is you'll suddenly have more people involved in the mix with getting your cards to the consumer's hand. So you might at the moment just be buying, you know, designing your product, getting it to your manufacturer, like we've got our printers, the stuff comes back from our printers, we do stuff to it in our workshops, and then it goes off to the distributor in the next country. But of course that distributor has sales agents that are selling their stuff in their stores, plus they have retailers that they're selling to, who then have consumers. And so all of those people that are following on after get affected by anything that goes wrong or anything that you do. So if it goes well, then, you know, they all win, because those distributors do well with your product, their retailers do well, and the consumers love the cards in those other countries. But obviously if things go badly, then that has repercussions, and it's not the same as having an issue with a retailer in the UK. You've got more people involved. The other thing that obviously happens is, because the distributor gets involved, you know, typically you might have to give away 40 to 50%, sometimes more, to do the deal. And that's because those distributors in their countries, they've got sales agents that they are sending out, you know, to sell the cards. So they have to pay them typically 15 to 20%. Then they've got their own warehousing costs and their own shipping costs, because all distributors pay for shipment from the UK to them. And so, you know, it can quite quickly get to the point where they've spent 30% on all those direct costs for them, and they've got 20%. If you get them 50%, you know, they've got 15% for their agents and 5% for their warehouse and 5% for their courier costs. You know, there's 25% left for them. And, you know, if you're only giving them 40% discount, sometimes you can get to the point where they're actually not making enough margin for it to be worth their while. So that's something to bear in mind. And it's also going to have an impact for you on your costs in the UK. Of course, the advantage is that you don't have sales agents to pay out of your mix, you know, which so you can save some margin there. But hopefully the volumes, the increase in volumes, because you've got another selling partner, hopefully with a big selling team involved, you're going to see an increase in volumes that's going to offset any loss in margins. The other thing to consider before you go abroad is, is your product proven? I mean, there's no point in doing a deal with to my mind, doing a deal with another country if you can't even sell it in your own country. Sometimes you might get lucky and have a product that doesn't work here that works in other countries, and those distributors will take on that risk. But generally, you want to get into a relationship with a distributor that you can have for the next 10 years, and they sell lots of your product, and they don't just have a one-hit wonder or have a problem with something you've sold that's not proven, and then they never come back. And also, do you have things like systems in place and know your numbers? So you've got to know all your numbers in terms of how much your products cost to make, and these are all obvious business things, but you need to know that you are making profit when you sell to your distributors. Otherwise, there's no point. And it has been with us over the years where we've turned down business just because we can't see a way of making money, with the distributor. And by systems, I mean just ways of checking your stock control, ways of analyzing your sales, so you don't get hit with big surprises as you go forward. So I'm just going to talk briefly about sort of potentially negative impacts and then potentially positive impacts, because there are both, and you do need to consider both as you're going forward. And I say potentially because some of these may affect you and some may not. If you've got good planning, then hopefully they won't. The obvious one is cash flow. So if you're selling your product to a distributor in, say, Germany, for instance, and then they're selling it onto their retailer, they're going to get paid probably from their retailer between 30 and 60 days, maybe up to 90 days. So that's going to affect how quickly they pay you and how quickly you get your cash back. So in effect, you could be printing double the number of cards or even triple the number of cards and then taking longer to get the cash back in from those jobs that you've then manufactured and sent out. So you need to either have an overdraft, you need to have cash set aside to handle these things, or you're going to come unstuck down the line. Credit risks, obviously dealing with other countries, it's not that easy. If you're dealing with a shop in the UK, you can just go knock on the door if you really have to get your money back. But if there's someone in another country, sometimes halfway around the world, there are credit risks involved. There are various ways of analyzing those credit risks. There are online tools that you can use. There's also, I tend to have asked people around in the industry to find out whether the distributors are known, and if they've been going for many years and they've got a good reputation, then I'm more willing to take on the risk. And of course, you can do pro forma with certain countries, so when they first place their orders, get them to essentially pay you up front. Currency fluctuations, most of the time we try and get our distributors to pay us in pounds. Having said that, with some of the larger distributors, it's not always possible to negotiate that kind of deal, and they might want to, for example, we have a very large customer in the States, they specifically want to pay in dollars. So as an example, this last year, we had the dollar fluctuated between about 150, 155 up to 170. That had about a £7,000 impact at the year end for us in currency fluctuations down. So in other words, we made £7,000 less than we thought we would if we'd valued the currency at the beginning of the year. So that's another thing to sort of factor in. There are ways of dealing with that as well, in that you can buy currency forwards through various currency brokers. So you can say to them, well, it's 150 at the moment, and I think it's going to go up to 170. Can I buy forward for the whole year at a set price? And they say, sure, we'll do a deal at 160. By the end of the year, your quid's in, and at the front, you might be out. But that's one way of dealing with it. Another way is just to hold the cash and then do the trades back into Great British pounds when when the currency's better for you selling your dollars. There can be IP risks. By that I mean intellectual property risks. So people can copy your stuff if you're not careful. And some countries are have more rigid rules about this, and some countries are a lot more less rigid. So you should know your territory with that. And there are ways of finding more out about these countries, which I'll come to in a sec, in terms of analyzing these risks. Freight forwarding issues, it's very important to get the distinction between when you're going to deliver something and when it's going to arrive with the customers. And you're relying on a third party to do this job for you. So you need to clarify with the freight forwarders that are doing the job, and your distributor, okay, we're shipping it on the 1st of October, but it's going to be with you on the 10th. or whatever it is. Sometimes we've had issues over the years where we said it's going to be shipping on the 1st and they thought it'd be with them on the 1st, as an example. And then also there's miscommunication issues because, other languages, and it's very important, particularly with us with the cards, before we print anything in another language for someone, we will send them proofs, PDF proofs, and they have to sign off on all those proofs and say, yes, this is correct. And then if there's some problem after that, then it's their responsibility to pay for that problem. Now, even when you do all of that, it's not an ideal scenario, even if he said, well, fine, it's your fault because we've had you proof it. Neither of you wants a situation where you've got a load of cards that are saying the wrong thing in the wrong, in the language that they want them in. There's more help. All of my slides have links in them to the various websites that are involved. So I've got a link to the .gov website, which is the main Gov one. These are some of the positive impacts. So for us, it can really improve. It improved how we did things. Because we were doing much larger volumes, we had to pay attention to our operational systems within the company. So that had a really positive impact. I'll come to the detail of that later. Larger volumes, obviously, that means that you, for example, if we're printing 1,000 of something normally, and then we're printing 3,000 of it for our distributors, if it's the same card, obviously if it's a different language, you print what they want. But if it's the same card and it is in English, then those costs will come down for you because you're printing more, in one go. And so the larger volumes means you can have some savings. You get access to markets that you might not normally have. So sometimes I might not make as much money selling to a company in Malta, but the way I see it is I wouldn't be selling to Malta if I wasn't working with the distributor in Malta. I'd have to go to Malta, do a trade show there, set up an agent network, all those kind of things, whereas actually if I find a distributor from Malta, they can come here, buy what they need, and they can handle everything on the ground over there. And that's a really key thing in terms of working with distributors, as they can deal with their local market better than you can from the UK. Your products can go global. That's really exciting. It's fantastic to think of our cards selling in Australia and Singapore and Hong Kong and Japan and all these other countries. It gives us a real sense of excitement. I put meet new people. I know you can go to a bar to meet new people, but the type of people that we meet are kind of, they're business people, they're entrepreneurs. They've all got their own take on things, and when you hang out with entrepreneurs and it's around your product, you get a lot of stimulating ideas around your product, and you find out what sells well for them in their country. That really informs how you design stuff going forward, which is really, it's been really useful for us. And of course, it's good for the UK for us to export lots of our lovely British products. So these are just some export sales options that you can do. You can sell direct to retailers. So that's shops, like a chain of shops might come over. So for example, there's one in South Africa that we're talking to at the moment. They are a distributor. I can't really find a way of it working currency-wise because the rand is a lot weaker in terms of buying power over there. But they've got 25 shops. So that's the way we would get around that, is we would just sell to a large chain of shops in that country. You can set up sales reps and managers. Those people would be employees that you would hire. And some people do this, like they hire a national account manager. You would hire an international sales manager for your company. And then they would be on your payroll, and they would be focused on going out to get business. You can set up a sales agent network. So I know of a greeting card company that they're currently going over to America. They set up a third-party warehouse, and they've gone to one of the main trade shows there, and they've set up a network of about 20 sales agents in America. They've cut out the distributor, and they're running that team of sales agents like you would run a team of sales agents in the UK. That's another option. There are there's about half a dozen that I know of international sales consultants in the UK. And so these are people who've been in the industry for a while. They know a lot of these other countries. They know all the main distributors in these countries. And they are kind of, they're sort of like an agent that networks you into your distribution setup. So that's a lot. And then the last option is the distributors network, which is what we currently work with. So the distributor is someone who will, all these other options, all the responsibility is with you. So in other words, these people will help you sell the cards, but then it's up to you to chase the money and deal with the rest of it. Whereas with the distributors, they will literally buy the product off you, albeit at a discounted price, and then they will take the responsibility of selling it from there. So if they buy 50,000 cards off you and they don't sell them, that's not your problem, that's their problem. I say it's not your problem. Ultimately, you want them to sell everything, so they keep coming back and ordering more 50,000. So, yeah. So how do you find these places to sell to? Well, there's a variety of ways that we've done over the years. I would really recommend reading all the main trade magazines. They often have articles in them on the different countries that you can sell to. Progressive Greetings is a very good example of one that every February they have one of those international sales managers talks about the pros and cons of various countries, how those countries are doing economically, how they're doing economically in relation to greeting cards or whichever product that you might be selling. Trade fairs, we picked up so many distributors and met so many at Spring Fair and Autumn Fair. They've been fantastic, and I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking here. They have been fantastic for us, and I'm sure you all know that if you've exhibited here before. The other one that we do, which is good for international, is Progressive Greetings Live. They actually fly people in deliberately, so that's been really good for export for us as well. And I would say that the shows have been the primary way of us avoiding having to fly around the world to do all these kind of deals. It's minimized the risk of doing those things because, you could pay all that money to go to another country, meet a bunch of people, come back and not actually have a deal land, whereas at the show they can see all your product out, and you can, very often you'll do the deal at the show or it'll come through within a couple of months afterwards, and you're not had to move for that. There are associations which have data on stuff. So there's a Giftware Association and the Greeting Card Association. Like I said, there's hyperlinks on all these slides to these various websites. Obviously UKTI, where I'm speaking today, they have reports that they do on various markets, and if they don't have a report, you can help. They can do one for you to analyze the sort of viability of your products in those marketplaces. And lastly, networking. So I've got LinkedIn here just because I needed a visual. I mean, LinkedIn's quite useful for connecting with international people, but also I find just chatting with other exhibitors at the show has been really useful for us in terms of saying, oh, I'm dealing with France, or have you met this French distributor, or, just learning about who's around. So sometimes you can come to a show and, not take that many orders, but if you find the names of 2 or 3 people that are distributors, it's incredibly valuable to you because these distributors can end up meaning thousands of pounds a year to your business. So one of the things to bear in mind is you will need extra help. I sort of touched on this at the beginning of the talk, but my business is, I'm in business with my wife. It was her business when she started, and I'm very much involved these days. And I wanted to grow the business more, and she said I could only grow the business if I got an assistant. And so I got an assistant, and that's just been hugely helpful. And I don't think we could have gone into all those countries without her help. And so because extra orders, they mean more admin. There's various different requirements for these different countries. If you're shipping to Switzerland and you go over £10,000, there's more forms that you've got to fill in. If you're shipping to the EU, you've got to track all your EU sales so you can report them to HMRC. Then I guess, follows on there. Paperwork needs close attention. There's different logistical requirements. Some of our distributors, so we drop off at their freight forwarder, and their freight forwarder takes to their country. Others, their freight forwarder comes to us, and others still we ship straight out to the country that's bought them and then charge back to those guys. Sometimes they have product alterations, so they want to have it in German or Spanish or French or whatever it is, different size cards. There's different time zones and languages. They can all affect how you do business. And we don't have any people in our office, so we do have some people that speak other languages, but so far we've managed to manage pretty well. I'd say France is the biggest one because our French distributors really don't speak English very well at all, and we speak even worse French, so that's always a challenge for us when we deal with them. But Google is brilliant these days because you can take the text from the email they send you and just translate it roughly by putting it into Google, which is really useful. And you have to stay on top of export sales. It's all very well just coming to the shows and you meet these people and they do the orders, and then you just leave it. It's like anything. If you want to get more sales, and this goes for the UK, you have to stay on top of your sales. So you have to have somebody allocated to dropping these people the latest brochure or sending them samples of your new card range. If you're not staying on top of those, then you will miss out, and particularly with distributors, because they often have trade shows that they're going to, and if you're not careful and your product samples come through after their trade show, you've missed a real sales opportunity in that country. So you need to know when they've got their shows, when your ranges come out, and try and fit them in with them. One of the things I'd recommend, though, which we do, is that we tend to launch all our products here first, and so the other other countries trail behind us slightly, and that's primarily because of that mistakes thing I mentioned earlier. If you cock up on a card in the UK and there's a problem, and you're not distributing it in other countries for 2 or 3, maybe 4 months afterwards, then you can pull that problem back, fix it, and then you're not rolling it out to those other places. The volumes can ramp up really quickly, so again, you're going to need help with that, and you need to plan for that. And lastly, I would say, if you're doing it all yourself, you've got to watch your UK sales. If you're not careful, you're running around doing all these export sales, you could be not paying attention to your UK customers. Because all these large volume orders are coming through, they can affect all your operational systems. So you're running around doing these large volume orders, but then your UK retailers are suddenly, their lead times going from a week to 2 weeks, sometimes to 3 weeks. And that's been one of the things that we've struggled with over these last couple of years, is just trying to stay on top of these lead times and make sure operationally we can cope with the extra sales. I'm just going to mention a few sort of bits of lingo that will come across your radar when you start doing this. Well, pricing is the first thing. You really need to get the pricing working for you and the distributor. And I've already touched on this. But I would say, as a general rule, when we first started out, we tried around 40%, but 40% wasn't really attractive enough for retailers in our market. It was closer to 50%, and that's really quite. I mean, the margins become very slim then for us, but. You've got to make it work for that person. If it doesn't work for them, you're not going to get your foot in the door, and you're not going to get their sales. Always quote your prices in GBP or USD rather than the actual pound or dollar sign when you're emailing people, because sometimes emails might come through different on different people's phones because of HTML and stuff, and you don't want them misinterpreting your price as a dollar price instead of a pound price, and they don't want that either. There's a term called X works, which essentially means that you deliver to the freight forwarder in the UK. And there's a term called free on board, which essentially means you deliver to the ship. Now, there's a small charge between getting it to the freight forwarder and getting it on the ship that you should be aware of. You need to talk to the freight forwarder for the detail of that. But when people are asking you, I tend to say, well, we do the deal on X works. And I clearly say to them also what that means is we will deliver to your freight forwarder in the UK, and the responsibility for costs going forward is on you to get it to whichever country you're in. FX means foreign exchange, so that's basically changing your whatever currency you've sold back into Great British pounds. If you are not buying currency forward, you do need to pay attention to the rates. They do go up and down, and the dollar's really dropped at strengthened against the pound recently because of the whole Scottish thing. It's worth paying attention to that, especially if you've got a load of dollars sitting in your bank account. There are companies that do this for you. There's loads of them. They will, if you come to these shows, they will be calling you, because I think they sort of mine our supply list for contacts and leads. One that we use is Sage International Payments, which is very good. MOQ means minimum order quantity. You probably come across before, but you should know when you come to trade shows or when you start dealing with distributors what your MOQs for them are. So if someone says to you, I'd like these greeting cards in Spanish, you need to know that they must order a minimum of 1,000 of each design for it to be worth your while in terms of shipping them. Pro forma means getting your money up front, as I said earlier. I do think you should insist on this. I mean, we do this with all our customers. We insist on it on the first order. And that really also it's really to get a sign of commitment from those customers moving forward. And you also may need to set up US dollar and euro accounts to receive money. I would get these set up before you actually start trading, so you can get your money in quickly and to the right place. There's a bit of paperwork stuff. HMRC, they like you to keep good records anyway, don't they? But this is really important. You need to keep all your emails and all your contacts with them. There's these things where people trade between borders and it's not legitimate, it's a VAT recycling scam that goes on. I don't fully understand it, but essentially the way the HMRC check, they want to know that you're exporting to a real person or a real company. So if you've got all those emails to prove it, and the bank will send you a transaction receipt saying we received these dollars, you need to keep all of that in a file with your year-end stuff if you ever get audited by HMRC. You must have proof of export for all your goods. So the freight forwarder that ships them on, you must get them to send you proof that the shipment has left the UK if you're not going to charge VAT. Otherwise, you'll be expected to charge VAT. Customs will say, well, you should be charging this person VAT. So, if you've got that proof, it means that's why you haven't charged it. You have to track all your export to EC countries because quarterly you have to do this thing called an EC sales list. It's not actually any money moving about. It's literally just saying, right, I sold £500 to Ireland, £300 to Germany, whatever, to the other countries in the EU. Here's my report. Once you get over a certain amount, they're now asking for it to be done monthly. So that's just a little bit of extra admin for you to keep an eye on. You should also, when you trade with these EU countries, check their EU VAT numbers. So there's a website where you can do that, and if you just Google it, you'll find it. And that's really important because the numbers all have to match up. I'm sorry, for me, there's really dull stuff, but it's really important, so you don't want to miss it. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Blue-Eyed Sun before I finish, some of the things that it's meant for us in terms of what's led on from export. So for us, in 2003, we did our first export order. It was direct to a customer in the States that had 130 shops. And it was a funny story because we were talking to a distributor at the time who, a distributor would have done much bigger volumes for us, but we were making all these cards ourselves, and they were labor intensive. And my wife and I were getting quite stressed about whether we could cope with these new orders coming through. And this retailer came on our stand and said, and I'd gone off for a sandwich. It was the only break I took that day for 20 minutes. And my wife was like, well, I don't think we can take your order. And she said, well, I've got 100 shops and I'd like to order. And she said, well, can you come back? and really, you don't want to be doing that. That's not the ideal way of doing it. But she did leave her card and she did come back, which we are to this day eternally grateful for because they still buy from us. And, the order that she placed took us 6 weeks to make. We used to make these glass enamel cards, and we used to fire these enamel pieces in the kiln 20 at a time. The kiln was 900 degrees Celsius. We worked rock solid for 6 weeks. And there's a photo somewhere. It's not digital, so I couldn't find it, but my wife just lying there next to this big pile of boxes. It essentially helped us pay for the deposit on our first home. And, this is the kind of impact. And also the key thing that we decided at that point is we just weren't ready to use a distributor in the States. And, that was a really good plan for us because we could have done the same type of volume of order and just not had the same level of profit, which just wouldn't have been worthwhile for us at that stage. So it's also, now we've got about 15 people work for us, and I think one of the things that Export's done for us, this is Rachel, this is my assistant that I hired. She's brilliant, everyone should get a Rachel. It was very serendipitous the way it all worked out. She happened to send us a letter at a certain time. She used to be a buyer at one of the major retailers in the UK, and she was moving to Brighton. And she just sent me a letter saying, if there's any work to be had, I'd be interested. And I had a meeting with her. I really liked her approach. She's very organized and loves spreadsheets, which is what we need to analyze everything that we're doing. And for me, it was very good because I had to step back and delegate more. And that enabled her to step up, and so she started as my assistant. She's now our operations manager. She looks after many of our key accounts and international distributors. It also helped me just our staff to stay goal focused, with export. So you've got to stay focused on how many export orders you've got coming in every week and how many cards you have to make or products you have to get ready. So we have a weekly meeting and we're focusing on all these things every week to make sure we don't miss anything, which means we've kind of had to raise our game. Our team have got stronger because they've got more responsibility. They've been delegated more. And I've put these other things, step up or step out. I don't mean to sound like one of these brutal employers that's like Alan Sugar. But, if I'm really honest with our business, we did have, and I don't mean to describe human beings as dead wood, but we had people in our staff that weren't carrying their weight. And they'd kind of been with us, and it was quite a relaxed vibe with our Brighton publishing company. Now we're very much a manufacturing business, and we're selling a lot of cards, and we're having to make a lot of cards, and we can't really have any fat on our system. We have to be lean, and we have to, because we've got to give these guys good prices, and we've got to do lots of work. So all those people eventually moved out of the business for one reason or another. Some of them we had to get rid of. And then when we hired, we were very specific with what we were looking for going forward in terms of making sure we had the right people going forward. Obviously, export led to improved sales. We started selling more, but it had a funny effect in terms of improved sales in that it extended the product life cycles. We saw our best sellers, some of them still sell abroad, but they don't sell in the UK. Now, that wouldn't be happening. They would just be dead products here. It spreads those development costs. So if it costs you £100 to develop, £1,000 to develop your product, if you're selling more of it for longer, that all gets spread across those sales. We managed to find ways of doing things faster, better, cheaper, and we also had more options for clearing stock internationally. It also led to us improving systems, so our warehouse got more efficient, stock control got more efficient, our productivity went up, our marketing goes up, so now when I market, I'm marketing globally rather than just in the UK. And Sage is the software that we use. It's now got the status update, which is fantastic, where you can manage your multiple different currencies, which is hugely helpful. This is just an example of how stuff influences sales. So in Germany, it costs more to send a square card. Most of our cards are square, and so you actually have to pay more postage to send a square card. So our distributor said, can you do this card here in German, but can you do it rectangular? So we started doing that. But one of the issues for us was this was all stitched, so it's very time-consuming for us to do. So when we came to do the next range, we deliberately designed it already in rectangular shape rather than square, and we designed it with a font so that we can change the font relatively easy to German, French, Spanish, whatever. So we had subtle little things happen to how we made our products that led to improvements there. So lastly, I guess, where will it lead you? I don't know, your products are all different, I'm sure, but it can take you to really interesting places. If you've got any questions, I'll be taking them to the side because I think I've run over slightly. All of the slides will be on the blog, and you can tweet me at Blue Eyed Sun. If you're a new greeting card publisher, we do a seminar in November called the Ladder Club. I don't organize it, but I speak at it every year. It's a fantastic thing if you're brand new to cards or if you're just starting out and you'd like to improve your business. That's very much worth checking out. There are some forms that UKTI have left out, and they've asked me to ask you to fill them in, please, because it's really helpful to get feedback from you about these talks and whether they're useful. And yeah, good luck with all your export. Thank you.